insane.
That's why you always see
I
transmission
want to hit it hard.
multiples of 3.
I'm probably gonna eat after this game, and then I'll be on.
It allows us to transmit
No, Dix, you down for
a
a break after this game? Got 5, 10 minute break.
From 2 wires to 3 allows you to
I'm gonna take 5. I'll be on the phone if Mike Morris finishes before me. You know.
The 3 phases are staggered 120 degrees
Call me?
apart from one another. Each
yeah,
phase
15.
on
What are you?
its own
10?
is just
You're probably
pulsing
15
on and
then.
off, but
Yeah,
in
you
sequence
you
they
grab
chase
one though,
each
Dix.
other, just
We'll
like
go to
the lights
15
on
or.
a movie theater's marquee. If your name is Tesla, or ironically Ferraris, no relation, and you design a motor with a 3-phase stator and ensure they're in the correct order, you'll get natural rotation of the field thanks to the chasing effect of the phases. Lots of big industrial motors are built like this, and so are the motors in modern electric cars. With a motor on the grid, it will have a fixed speed thanks to the fact that the electric grid itself has a fixed frequency.
This is like, I wish I could upload this twice, man.
Vehicle, the motor is hooked up to some fancy power electronics which turn the DC power from the battery into 3-phase AC power at whatever frequency and voltages you like. This is called a variable frequency drive, and they're not exclusive to electric vehicles, and in fact in EVs they're usually not called that, but that's a story for another time. Wasn't this video about fans? Well, I promise, we're getting there. 3-phase power is generally not found in the domestic environment. The closest you'll typically get in the US anyway is in a situation like an apartment building where the building has a 3-phase supply, and there might be things like elevators or large HVAC units with 3-phase motors in them. You only have 2 of the 3 phases in your personal breaker panel, and large appliances like electric stoves will be put across 2 of them, giving you 208 volts rather than the standard 240. Our electrical system in the US is weird, but that's a story for another time. So anyway, with only a single phase, you ain't getting rotation. You're just getting power and thus a magnetic field, which pulses on and off, and changes polarity with each cycle. Now, you can design a motor to work with that just fine. The universal motor
she slowed.
design.
I thought I hit her.
Here, a
Dude, I thought I hit her with a Q, dude. My Q didn't go off.
used to provide its own spinning field by switching
I
the
don't want to get
polarity
Pikachu'd
of
at this
that
guy.
field as the rotor, which typically is itself also an electric.
I thought I hit a Q on that guy, man. What the
Therefore, always creating a traction in one rotational direction. They even work on DC power, which is why they're called universal. But the carbon brushes, which carry current through the commutator, wear out over time. They're not usually super efficient. They create a lot of electrical and often audible noise. There's usually some arcing going on, and so they're typically only used in certain applications which don't run them for long periods at a time, like power tools or food processors. For something like a fan, which may run for days at a time, you'll want to use an induction motor.
Oh,
These
it reset, dude.
that wear and will generally last
like
as long
Kaiso
as their
there.
mechanical
Suck.
bearings do. And
That's a bad
you can make an
leash.
induction motor work with
It's
the
like their
field
leash
is
sucked too,
rotating,
though.
because the rotor itself rotates.
No, it's just.
Keep in mind that from a spinning motor's perspective, the stator is what's spinning. So the electromagnetic field itself is too, even if it's not rotating from our global perspective. But of course, when you first turn on the fan, it's not spinning. And this is bad. See, the amount of torque an induction motor produces is a function of its slip. Slip describes the difference in speed between the rotating magnetic field and the spinning rotor. The rotor actually has to be moving through the field produced in the stator in order for it to react against it and produce mechanical force. And this means that single-phase induction motors are not self-starting. If both the field and the rotor are stationary, no torque is produced. In contrast, a stopped 3-phase induction motor will immediately produce torque when it receives power because the field is rotating around the stationary rotor. And that means that the rotor is consequently moving through it even when it's stopped. From a standstill, the rotation of the field around the rotor will induce the necessary currents in it for it to start moving, and will accelerate until it's almost, but not quite, to the same speed as the rotating field. It never reaches synchronous speed with the field because then it would not be slipping at all and no torque would be produced. And this is exactly the reason a single-phase induction motor cannot start itself. There is no slip when nothing's moving. So now you've got a problem. How do you get the rotor to start rotating? Well, you cheat and create your own rotation somehow. There are a ton of different ways to go about this. You can use capacitors, you can use shaded poles, you can use a separate out-of-phase start winding, which gives a temporary kickstart. You could just give it a push. The specifics don't really matter, but what does matter is that you've got to generate a rotating field, at least temporarily, to produce enough torque to get the motor going. After which point, the rotor's movement relative to the stator produces the necessary currents within the rotor's windings to keep itself going, and we're happy. And yes, I am still oversimplifying. We'll talk about Fleming's rules and Lenz's laws when you're older. One of, if not the, simplest ways to create rotation with only one phase is with a shaded pole motor. Let's look at one. It's a good thing I still haven't put the selection accumulator back in the jukebox, because it's got one of these. Now, this is a C-frame motor. These look a lot like Transformers, and indeed operate a lot like Transformers, but they're actually Decepticons. Instead of another coil on the other side of the iron core for converting voltages, it's got a squirrel cage rotor. This is the bit that has currents induced in itself, producing electromagnetic fields which react against the fields created in the stator, which in this type of motor is the hole in this side of the core, but that's not what's important right now. Instead, it's these little bits of copper. These are called shading coils, and their job is to react to the flux created by the field coil over here and slightly delay its phase in these two locations. Electromagnetism is weird and complicated, and I'm getting deeper than I need to really, as always, but here's the upshot. These coils break the uniformity of the magnetic field produced in the stator, causing a very slight delay in flux in these two locations, which will in effect produce a bit of rotation in the field overall thanks to that shifting in time. These shaded poles provide just enough rotation in the field to get the rotor spinning from a standstill. And once it has enough speed, the induction currents in the rotor become quite substantial as it moves through the bulk of the pulsing field, and now it really takes off. So what does this have to do with fans and their switches? Well, everything. You see, the shading coil isn't really that great of a way to start a motor. It works, but the amount of starting torque it creates is quite small. They are, after all, completely passive components, sort of stealing a bit of the output from the stator. That weak sauce starting force means that this style of motor is really only suitable for loads like, well, a fan, where the force required to start it spinning is relatively low, and the load increases as rotational speed does. To start, it really just has to overcome static friction, but once it's spinning, it can really induct. And that's the main reason that high is typically the first setting next to off. While a shaded coil motor isn't super great at producing starting force, it's cheap and entirely passive. You don't need a component like a capacitor or a centrifugal switch to disable a start winding. You just give it power and it goes. But the amount of starting torque you get
They're getting
depends
frustrated,
on what
bot lane.
speed the fan is set to.
That's good.
The different speed settings are usually accomplished with different
They're about to check
windings
out in
within the
live.
motor that produce varying amounts of power, and thus torque. And since the shaded pole affects all the windings equally, on lower speeds you get proportionally less starting torque. Making the first selectable speed high will ensure that the motor will, at least briefly, produce the maximum starting torque it can whenever it's switched on. That way it's more likely to successfully start. This hand chopper is nearly 100 years old, and it too has its switch in the order of off, high, medium, low. Now, it's probably got a shaded pole induction motor. That design certainly isn't exclusive to C-frame motors, but this motor is literally an antique, and I would rather not take it apart to find out for sure. Anyway, since I can just easily reach out and grab the fan blades, I can demonstrate how weak the starting torque is. It's surprisingly easy to hold the blade back, even set to high. This little fan moves a lot of air on high, and that obviously produces much more force than it is exerting on my fingers right now. This is seriously much weaker than you might expect. Now, if I dared to reach in and grab the
Dude,
blade
we're like
while it
really
was
wrecking this
spinning,
guy's face a little
I
bit.
would regret it, but also I'd
That's
find
good.
it would be producing much more torque than it is right now. Because, well, that's just how induction motors work. But you don't want to find a motor in this stalled condition. Why? Well, because current is still flowing through the stator windings when it's stalled.
Oh well, at least we get free dragon.
And in fact, there's more current flowing through it right now than would be if it were spinning. This
That's
fan
alright.
uses
They're
about
legit
42 watts
just
of its on
focusing
high.
me topside.
Right now,
This
with
is
the motor
their
stalled,
fourth
it's
gank.
using more than 70. That's getting
It's okay, just hang
dissipated
back
as
then.
heat in the motor's
Big deal. He
winding.
only has 3 kills.
And before
We
too
have
long,
like
it could
double
burn
their
itself
CS,
up.
bot lane. We
If
have
Yeah.
the fan switch were
plates.
designed
I
with
mean, like, come
low
on.
in the first
kills.
position,
Oh yeah, no
it
matter
would
what
turn
happens
the fan
top
as well that
lane,
the
Dude,
blades
Jake
would
has
Once
6
I
kills.
get-
not
don't.
only be annoying, but could
Yeah,
hurt
you're
the
irrelevant if you had
and
no
a fan
farm at
like
all,
this
man. You get that ult on,
potentially
man.
start a fire.
Yeah, like as
Now,
long
to
like
be
once
clear,
I get my
modern
ultimate,
fans are required
like
to
legit,
tolerate
we're
being
just
installed
we
for
win.
indefinite periods
Yeah.
of time
It's
without
alright,
being
I'll
housed
be
in.
We have a wombo, me and
After
you.
all,
I didn't even know that,
left
man.
it on
Just
low,
me
have
and
power
Valkos
interruption,
and Alpha have a
and not
wombo.
get the benefit of the starting kick.
It's just the perfect
New
amount of
fans
time that
will
I
either
can't
have
miss my
some
E.
sort of thermal protection
But if I
or
miss my
some
E, I get a
kind
full
of stator
combo. So
design
it's like
which can't
you
possibly
don't understand how much
pass
full
the
combo Valkos
dangerous
does. You know,
knowledge.
like
Still though,
it's like a
you
long
don't
range just
uninstall
assassinate.
It's bad and also just annoying. Now, I should add that it's not like most fans can't produce enough starting torque on low. If I have this set to low and then plug it in, it gets going just fine. But it doesn't hurt to play it safe. And, fun fact, I have encountered a ceiling fan on a fan control which was in fact stalled on low. I had switched it on and you could hear it humming, but it wasn't turning. I needed to increase the speed to medium, which produced enough torque to get it spinning, and then I can move it back to low.
That may be bot.
And it turns out
That's
that
good
these
now.
modern electronical smart fan controls I installed because I couldn't help myself are
so
designed
is-
to
so is
prevent
frickin'
that
let's just
very
say
thing from happening
Eve.
by always initially switching the fan to high. This here is my biggest fan, and I last had it set to low, so when I turn it on, it will go
Said
back
gut,
to
man.
that same setting.
Get this guy.
But for about
Isn't
2
Eve online
seconds,
enough, sorry.
the fan control gives it full beans to make sure it starts spinning, and then it switches to low power.
How did Eve survive that? She's like invisible still? I don't know.
Pretty neat, huh?
You
In
must have a
fact, these fan
stopwatch
controls are themselves
now.
pretty neat just because they're bypassing the fan's internal speed controls and creating its own. And I should also add that ceiling fans often use capacitors as part of the speed control schema. Really, there are just a gazillion types of electric motor out there, and you can lose your mind trying to keep track of all of them and the ways we control them, but that's a story for another time. Now, it could very easily be argued that this high comes first positioning isn't really required anymore. After all, how frequently would a fan motor stall anyway? At least one like this. And
Oh, I just used my
you could argue
freaking
it was never
stopwatch.
required anyway.
I was trying to move
This
it.
thing's
Like, oh, I got a
100
free
years old and it
position this
starts
tomorrow.
fine even on low. And there could very well be fans that don't use shaded pole motors. In fact, there are certainly exceptions out there, and even fans which do in fact put low first. Whether that's because they use a different motor design or just because somebody did the math and realized we've been worried about a very unlikely thing is unclear. But one thing is certain. The fan switch isn't, or at least wasn't, designed like this just to annoy you. There is in fact a method behind this madness. When you take an already not great method of starting a motor and weaken it with lower power settings, it doesn't hurt to give it a kickstart first. Maybe at this point it's more tradition than it is actual need. As a matter of fact, I've had this very fan on a separate switch for years with it always set to low, and it never once stalled. It clearly produces enough torque on its own to get going in any speed.
Like I call it twerk.
It's almost a century old. But the fact that these modern fan controls always kick the fan on high from the stop is, I think, a sure sign that putting high first is very intentional. Besides, even if stalling weren't likely, well, how else are you supposed to know how many times you're going to need to pull the ceiling fan chain to get to the speed you want? There's something with the delivery of that line.
Someone's calling me. Uncle Paul's calling me.
Did
I
that
don't know.
say...
Yeah, I'm gonna go turn this stream off and stuff.
Might have sounded a little different. The 3 phases are with a motor on the grid. I should silence that, shouldn't I? I should remember to do that before I start. Anyway, we'll be back. There's usually some arcing going on, and so they're typically not used in most. Only used, not used, only used. That's fine. That's fine. Just go ahead and... That's fine. If I have this set to low and plug it in, but I need to turn the quarter in, are designed to prevent that very thing from happening.
Eve is bot lane. Even and Quinn were bot lane. Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Last
This
signal
video
she
has
was
had something
missing.
like 17
Sorry, I had to,
false starts.
I had
I've
to-
gone
It's all
down a
good.
number
No, it's not
of
your fault.
rabbit holes
I had
trying
a
to
phone call.
understand a bunch of
Watch
things
out,
that I had at
watch
one
out,
point
fish mid.
committed to making an
Quinn behind
entirely
you.
different video because of that. But then I ran into a number of conceptual hurdles that I don't have the energy to address right now. So we're back to the simple scope of that first one. Now, I'm going to be honest here. My main point with this video is to address a grievance I have with how the rest of the world seems to understand the United States and more broadly North American electrical system. While it's true that we have terrible, barely adequate receptacle designs, and our kettles are slower than yours, here's a fact about us that I think will blow a few fuses out there. The US is a 240 volt country. I can hear a lot of you going, what? But it's true. We have 240 volts in our electrical panels and at our disposal. You've heard about our obsession with air conditioning, right? Did you really think we are cooling our gaudy McMansions with a machine we just plug into a regular outlet? No. And some of us have electric stoves, electric water heaters, clothes dryers, and even electric vehicle charging now. We're not doing all those things with a measly 15 amps at 120 volts or 1800 watts.
Yeah, you have that issue.
Let's take a
Be
trip to the
careful,
other
Quinn's
room
on
where
her
I have
bird.
a standard US
Good.
service panel.
She's on her
we can look
bird.
at.
She's on the
Here's a
bird
standard
again.
US service
On the
panel
bird
we can look
again.
at. It might be a little hard to hit. I'm just kidding. I added that 60
She's on
hertz
her
humming
bird.
post.
That was the
Did you
funniest thing
seriously
ever.
think
I
our
don't
service
know.
panels are
It's
some
like
sort of
the way you said
disastrously
it.
loud thing?
Watch
I
out,
bet
Quinn's
some
on
of
her
you
bird
do.
again.
Anyway, this
Yeah.
building
Like,
is a
like, come on,
single-family
for real?
home.
You can ride
That's
that bird? Is that all you
important
do?
because of a
And
little thing I'll
live?
be bringing up later.
Yeah, like legit,
This
at the
little
moment I
wood
get
thing
her
on the
less than
side
half
of your doorbell
HP, she just
transformer.
gets on her bird
Pay
and
no
looks for a
attention to
kill
that.
like elsewhere.
And also, any of the wires
She's on
that
her
might
bird
seem a
again.
little less
Cause yeah, like
tiny
she
than
knows
others
since
are
I'm
the
level
work of yours
6, she
truly,
can't
but
like, or
again,
she
not
knows
important.
and have ultimate and can't
Now,
beat me.
inside,
I don't know,
you'll
there's
find
some-
a main breaker at the top,
There's
and
just so
a
funny
bunch
about
of,
that.
in fact, to many people, an absurd number of circuit breakers feeding individual
Like
circuits. But there's still
What are you
room
telling me
for
to take?
two
I don't even know
more.
what the rest of we take.
The main breaker is a 200
Hey,
amp
the
breaker.
buff, the blue buff?
This home, like
What?
many,
I don't
pretty
know.
much
I don't
all
really care. I don't
homes
care about the
within
blue buff,
last few
man.
decades
You
has
don't know me.
200 amp service.
There's things I don't
Now,
care about.
You
One
might
of
be
them's the
thinking
blue
that's
buff.
200 amps at 120 volts. So
You don't
we
have to
have
if I want to take the blue
24
buff, I'm not gonna
kilowatts
ask your permission.
But no, that's 200
Say we
amps
drive
at
on it.
240 volts. So in fact, many
Well, I
homes
mean, I'm just
have
gonna get a free
48
top
kilowatts
tower
to go around.
slowly.
100
surely.
amp service is still
Don't worry, we
fairly
have to
common,
defend this
but
down
that's
here.
still
That's good.
24
I need, like,
kilowatts.
50
Plenty
gold
for
for
smaller
mine.
homes, especially since natural gas or
cute.
other types of fuel
www.
combustion for space heating is still quite common around these parts. Now, take a look at these breakers and you'll find that they have their capacity printed on their toggles, and you'll also see that a few of them are weird. They take up 2 spaces for some reason. Huh. Well, those are 240 volt circuits. This one's going to a clothes dryer, this one to an air conditioner, etc. But why 2 spaces? That seems a little weird, doesn't it? Well, the reason it takes up 2 spaces has to do with the weird way we get 240 volts. You see, our power transformers that feed our homes do produce 120 volts, but twice. Yeah, it's weird, but first, a quick reminder of what transformers do. They're more than meets the eye. Pretty much
this
the
guy's humor,
reason
dude.
we use AC power all over the place is that we can use transformers to step the voltage up and down all willy-nilly.
You're just killing
All you
everything.
gotta do is
Like,
wrap a
oh
bunch
shit.
of wires around an iron core.
You don't mess with the undersea crew, man.
Through it. Then wrap some more
Hey,
wires
why aren't you
around the core
Nami?
on the other side, and that field
What's
will
your
induce
problem?
current in those
No,
wires.
Dix, why do you have to be different?
Simply vary the number of turns
I'm
of
just
wire
chilling,
around
man.
the core on each
But you could have been
side,
Nami.
and you can change the
We're
voltage
gonna be all
according to that
undersea
ratio.
creatures.
It's pretty neat.
could've.
It allows us to transmit power through
Yeah,
overhead
why didn't
or
you play
buried
Nami
electrical
top, bro?
lines
What's
running
your
at
problem?
thousands
I'll
of
do it
volts.
next. I'll do it next
That
game.
lets those
Okay,
wires
is there
create a
other
ton of
undersea
power for
creatures
their
than
size,
that?
Because while the cross-sectional area of any
could do a Lowy.
affects
I
how
mean,
much current
so-
goes
Oh,
into
you
the
could
circuit, when
do
you bump the
you could
voltage
do that.
way
I
up,
see.
It's got
you can
tentacles,
carry
you know?
more power. That's watts with the same amount of current and thus
Maybe
a
some
relatively
type of
small cable.
squid.
This allows us to transmit
something like
power
that.
over long distances
we got-
economically in
If
the
we're gonna bring
near
the undersea
megavolt
crew, we gotta be all undersea.
Substations will step that down to a more reasonable 11 or maybe 32,000 volts for neighborhood distribution, and right before it enters your home, it is stepped down by a final transformer which delivers the final relatively low voltage to your home. Now, normally, you just hook a couple
guy's
of
kinda
wires
annoying,
up to
man.
the ends of the secondary wire.
Okay, shit. Dude, you're not gonna let me watch my electrical engineering video in the background. Bird. Be on your bird. She got her bird. On me.
Yeah, we're grabbing Rickroad right now.
Oh, it's just a refill. Make sure no one steals it. I love just tickling people with my ult. It's like, did you just really just tickle me with that? I'm like, yeah. That's the whole point. I'm at no threat. This Uber's gonna have an issue getting out of there alive. I'm playing to riot. Not buffed enough. Oh. I don't know if you want to go in there, man. Yeah.
Yeah, legit, they just had all 5 top lane.
Yeah, I don't know why you walked into that. We were watching Uber die. I was just getting the outskirts of like.
Yeah, I was trying to save you, dear. I thought there was 3 at first, and the other 2 just came out last
You just weren't paying
second.
attention. Okay, that's no problem.
Yeah, I was blinded by Quinn Q for like 3 seconds.
Oh yeah, I get you. If you're blinded,
Yeah.
it's better. Like it's just good policy when you're blinded to walk away from the fight. You
Yeah.
think? Oh, here goes here. I love stopwatch, man. Dude, I got Ingenious Hunter stopwatch. This is pretty cool.
That's what's up.
Support Ingenious Hunter is good because you're gonna be dropping more like scanner things. Here comes Zed. Watch out, Zed from behind. We gotta stick close together when Zed comes in. He's in this bush almost certainly.
He's here.
Just jump. Oh, he's in the middle. Almost certainly not in the bush. Actually, he's certainly not in the bush. And that's just a Nico on this team as well. In which case, I don't know what. Oh, actually make a character in my game called Tenley. I'd be like, certainly. I'm gonna have to like low key. I don't know what the copyrights on Stooges are because like there's 3 Stooges like three Stooges. There's three Stooges like videos.
Oh, my Quint's coming.
That's not like fun.
We got Dragon though.
She blinded me at hall. See, the fish just killed everything.
My job, bro. Kill everything.
Yeah, thanks, man. Dude, that's awesome. Dude, look at this. I got Ingenious Hunter and these 2 items. I feel like a baller. Oh, get out of here after this, get this, and then out. Ping this a million times. It's ping Baron. Everybody ping Baron a million times. You don't want to be in this area. Okay. Yeah, I think they understand. Let's go again. Come here. Okay. You're not helping anything over there. Like, Kai didn't come, man. That was a great call if Kai would come.
Yeah. I'll go all, dude.
Oh, everybody in line.
Oh, I'm stuck. Bye, Joe.
Dang. Got no mana.
Kai's is actually doing a good job because he extended the battle.
Split.
Yeah, if she would have did, we'd have got the Baron instantly. But I mean, it's not that bad because by distracting off of it, you know, it's all right. Not terrible, terrible.
Got 4,000 gold. No big deal.
The fish, dude. You are the fish. I'm gonna stop calling you the show. You'll be like the fish show, or just the fish. Make you the fish.
I'm a shark.
The shark. The shark! The shark show. Oh man, don't go to the shark show.
Shark show, yeah.
Shark show. Shark show for show show. Show shark. The show shark. The show shark redemption. Oh look at this. Get off your bird. Get off the bird. Come on, let's get on. It's on the bird. Actually, that's not a good strategy. I'm just doing it because I like to knock things off the bird. Why are we going down the middle? This is kind of silly. It's like, why not?
Because we have 2 waves coming in with big minions.
Okay. I'll play back then. I'm not big confident in this one. We have 3 people versus 5. It's silly. It's really silly to be doing this.
Just play a little slow. Don't.
We just gotta hover this area and allow Kaisa to push.
Maybe we could be doing Baron right now. I mean, that's what that would be like the easy thing to do.
That's true.
I'm
so far ahead though. Like I can.
Yeah, but I'm saying like the proper way to do it.
All right, let's go in on this person. All right.
Huh. Ooh, close one.
Alright, let's see. Here, everybody take naps and stuff, or Mike, feed yourself.
I gotta eat food. I haven't ate anything today.
Oh, you gotta eat protein all the time, man. If you're gonna be bodybuilding, it goes through your system every like 3 hours. You don't have protein in you for 3 hours, you're gonna be getting skinny.
Yeah, that's true.
Dude, someone said support diff. Jinx.
I'm gonna eat and I'll be back on.
When they say support diff, then I have to say #1 on every game I've ever played. That way, it makes the other guy doesn't feel so bad. Okay, I'm gonna do some fake queues up as flex queue and normals and stuff. So I'm gonna jump out. I'm gonna do. Let's stick in the crew. Maybe people show up here. Yeah.
I'm gonna get out of this because I don't know how long it's gonna take me to eat.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a long nap. See you, no dicks. You can grab games if you want. We'll probably be about 20 minutes out.
I'll be back on no dicks.
Yeah, same here.
When The Witcher 3 first came out in 2015, it didn't take long for CD Projekt Red to realise that there was a big problem with the game's economy. You see, a few enterprising players figured out that they could go to White Orchard, kill all the cows on the farm, and sell their leather for cash. And then, if Geralt meditated to pass some time, the cows would all come back to life. So, if you've got the patience, you could repeat this simple process as many times as you want and amass infinite wealth before leaving the very first village in the game. Whoops. Look, video game economies can be very complicated to design, with all sorts of room for imbalance and exploits. But if you get it right, an economy can be a really powerful tool. It can shape player behavior, change the pace of progression, offer up difficult choices, and create challenging puzzles. So in this video, I want to give you a crash course in video game economy design. I'm going to map out a typical video game economy by describing the 5 basic entities in the system and the way they connect. And as we go, I'll show you how the design of the economy can change the way we play. Plus, I'll let you know how CD Projekt Red fixed that nasty cow-killing exploit. I'm Mark Brown, and this is Game Maker's Toolkit. So, first things first, what is an economy? Well, in games at least, it's a term that describes the flow of resources around a system. And resources covers just about anything you can collect. Coins, crafting materials, swords, experience points, ammo.
Money!
So everything from Stardew Valley to Elden Ring to Doom Eternal to Pokemon has an economy. And they share most of the same basic entities. Let's start with this one, the tap. Taps generate new resources into the economy. That could be enemies who drop experience points when they die, a sawmill that harvests wood, a regenerating health bar, or rocks that spit out iron ore. Some taps generate resources automatically on a timer, others need to be mined manually by the player. Now, the thing about taps is that they can be used to incentivize player behavior. If you want players to fight monsters, then you can put loot drops on the enemies. If you want to push players to explore the world, then you might put unique crafting materials in every biome. And if you want players to punch demons in the face, then shower them with health points when they glory kill baddies. Also, just like a real tap, you can change the flow of resources. This will affect how scarce and valuable a resource is, from rare ammo drops in a survival horror game to an abundance of munitions in a fast-paced shooter. But that can also affect the pace and balance of the game. More on that in a bit. Oh, and in extreme examples, a broken tap can create economy-busting exploits. When we get resources from taps, we put them in our next entity, the inventory, which could be an actual inventory that you can rummage through, or it could describe a simple counter like a health bar or coin wallet. Whatever the case, you need to decide if it has an upper limit or not. Giving players a maximum carry weight or forcing them to stash every gun in a tiny attaché case can create challenging decisions about what items are most essential right now. And a limit can also be used to stop players amassing too much wealth, and it forces them to actually use these resources and not just carry 1,000 potions until the end of the game because, just in case. Now here's the thing about resources. Some of them are inherently useful, like swords and guns. But others, like experience points and money, don't actually do anything on their own. They need to be exchanged for something more useful. So say hello to our next entity, the converter. Anything that lets us exchange one resource for another, like spending money on new gear in a shop, or crafting a better weapon from raw materials, or cashing in experience points to level up. In some games, the cost of a conversion is going to have an impact on the pace of the game. For example, if we know how much XP we need to level up, and how many experience points drop when an enemy is killed, we'll know, roughly, how many enemies the player needs to slay before gaining more power. And so that progression can be sped up or slowed down by changing the cost of the conversion or the output of the tap. Now, converters can be a great way to encourage decision-making in the player. Like, whenever you go to a shop, you need to carefully decide how to spend your limited pool of cash. But it's easy to mess this up. Look at Ghost of Tsushima. It has about 13 different crafting materials, and most are directly linked to a specific upgrade. Yew wood for ranged weapons, leather for armor, iron for your sword. This means that you don't have to make a decision about how to use these materials, because upgrading one bit of gear often doesn't impact your ability to upgrade another. That's very different to Metro Exodus, which only has 2 crafting materials, components and chemicals, and pretty much everything you can make, from ammo to mask filters to health packs, requires both. So because crafting one thing temporarily locks you out from crafting another, it means you have to be smart and intentional about everything you bash together. Having lots of currencies can be great for encouraging exploration or making certain conversions much rarer than others. But if you want to create difficult decisions for the player, have fewer currencies that can be spent on lots of different things. So what are we actually exchanging these resources for? Well, typically it's something to make the player more powerful, more efficient, or more resilient. Bigger swords and better armor, so that they're ready to face the challenges in the next part of the game. But what about if players can return to the area they just came from, but now with better gear, stronger stats, and more health? Well, for some games, that's what makes them fun. Idle games like Cookie Clicker and roguelikes with permanent progression make players repeat the same or very similar content, but each time with more power or efficiency than before. This creates a positive feedback loop, a system where the output is fed into the input and then reinforces the output more strongly. And it can be very compelling and dangerously addictive. But you know what else we might call repeating the same content to slowly amass power? Grinding. And that's not always what we want. So maybe you want to get rid of this power creeping feedback loop, or at least make it less tempting or less tedious. I mean, you could do what CD Projekt Red did when it came to fixing that cow killing exploit. In a patch released a few months after the game's launch, there was a rather cryptic new addition to the game, the Bovine Defense Force Initiative. And what did the BDFI do? Well, if you killed 6 cows in White Orchard, the game would spawn a level 27 monster nearby who would rush in and, well, put a stop to your rampage. So that's certainly one way to fix it, but here's 3 other smart ways to go about it. One method is to make that power creep more interesting by turning it into a puzzle. Take a look at Factorio. It has the exact loop I just described. You start by digging up a small amount of coal and iron, and then convert those into plates. You can then use those new resources to create more drills and furnaces that will let you repeat that same process more effectively. But as you go along, creating conveyor belts and production lines and different energy sources, you realize that it's not just a simple, obvious loop of gaining power. Instead, it's a complex problem-solving headache of automation and optimization. Games like Satisfactory and Stardew Valley are fun because they challenge players to figure out how to be more efficient. What's the smartest conversion route for a certain resource? How does the layout of your factory affect its efficiency? Where are backlogs and stoppages happening, and how can you redesign to stamp them out? Can you keep up with repair and maintenance? And how might a change in circumstances, like a sudden drop below minus 100 degrees Celsius, change your plans? Plus, while you can just slowly amass wealth over time, you're encouraged to optimize with deadlines, rewards, and competing nations. Another way to get rid of grinding is to implement a negative feedback loop, a system that works to balance itself to a status quo. In Elden Ring, if you graph out the number of runes needed to unlock the next level, then you'll see that it makes a sharp upward curve, where it costs more and more experience points to jump to the next level. So while you only need to dispatch about 10 guards in Limgrave to jump from level 9 to level 10, you'd need to kill hundreds of them to go from level 49 to 50. By changing the cost of the conversion in lockstep with your level, Elden Ring makes killing the same simple enemies over and over again incredibly ineffective, massively discouraging this tactic. And so players are pushed to explore further afield, fight tougher monsters, and take are fun because they slowly amass wealth over time. you're encouraged to optimize with deadlines, rewards, and competing nations. Another way to get rid of grinding is to implement a negative feedback loop, a system that works to balance itself to a status quo. In Elden Ring, if you graph out the number of runes needed to unlock the next level, then you'll see that it makes a sharp
I don't have a
upward
shirt, man.
curve,
Like,
where it
dudes
costs
used to not wear
more
shirts all
and
the
more
time.
experience
It was
points
like
to jump to
culture.
the next level. So while you only need to dispatch about 10 guards in Limgrave to jump from level 9 to level 10, you'd need to kill hundreds of them to go from level 49 to 50. By changing the cost of the conversion in lockstep with your level, Elden Ring makes killing the same simple enemies over and over again incredibly ineffective, massively discouraging this tactic.
I didn't
So
even hear what he
players
said
are
again.
pushed to explore further afield, fight tougher monsters, and take bigger risks. The final way to deal with grind is to slow it down by implementing another economic entity, the drain. Drains are the opposite of taps because they permanently remove resources from the economy. That includes breakable weapons, losing health or units, paying taxes or feeding citizens, and when you shoot a gun, you're draining your ammo count with every bullet fired. So, just like the power gaining loop from before, drains send players back to the tap, but this time without getting stronger, because they're just replacing the stuff that was lost. So this slows the player's power growth, because they have to spend time and resources to merely patch up their losses. But that's not the only reason drains exist. They can also force players to get on and act. A hunger meter that's constantly going down forces players to look for food, and crops that spoil after a certain time will need to be accounted for in your optimized schedule. Drains can also force you to mix up your strategies. Zelda's breakable weapons can be a bummer, but they do make you try out new swords and encourage you to explore the world and find replacements. Drains can also add risk. Back in Elden Ring, your stash of experience points can be lost when you die, and as we saw before, you need to carry more and more of them on your person before you can level up. So this adds a real sense of danger when exploring new areas, one which grows and grows the more runes you're holding. Or look at Death Stranding. It's tempting to take a huge number of packages at once for a massive payout, but every extra box on your back increases the risk of taking a tumble, and because boxes can be destroyed or drained upon impact, you're at risk of losing
I got this in my
everything.
freighters.
It's all about weighing up the potential reward. It's worth noting though that drains can also be positive feedback loops, just for losing power rather than gaining it. Consider how in Monopoly, every time you lose money, you become less and less able to compete with other players, sending you in a painful downward spiral towards bankruptcy. I did a whole video on this conundrum in the context of losing units in XCOM a few years back. I'll put a link to it in this video's end screen. So there's one more type of economic entity that's not quite as common, but can lead to some really interesting gameplay. It's the trader. Traders act like other players. They have their own inventory and resources, and will buy, sell, and trade stuff based on their own desires and rules. Think of the other nations and city-states in Civilization. I lumped shops into converters, and in a lot of games, that's exactly how they work. You simply convert money into items, like a vending machine. But look at the merchants in The Witcher 3. Each one has their own stash of items and their own wallet of money, and they will buy and sell items for a different price depending on what type of shop they run and where they're located. This means that enterprising players can buy items for cheap in one area and then sell them for a profit elsewhere. With traders, we can create complex puzzles of trade routes and investments, and reward players for being canny with how resources may be valued in different places or at different times. Though, just like with converters, traders can potentially create a positive feedback loop of the player getting richer and richer with every transaction. So, you may need to implement a fix for this. That might involve modeling supply and demand.
Oh, I thought it was locked up, man.
A cute game about raiding dungeons and then selling the loot in your shop. You can flood the market with an item and drive its price down. You can't just repeat the same sale forever. Or you could add an element of risk to the investment. In Animal Crossing, you can buy turnips on a Sunday at a certain cost, and then every day that week, the Nook shop will buy those turnips for a different price. If you're lucky, you can turn a huge profit on your investment. But if you're unlucky, you'll never see a good price before the turnips drain out of your inventory next weekend. It's basically a miniature stock market, and by adding a sense of risk and reward, we not only go some way towards fixing the exploit, but we add extra decision making. How much am I willing to risk? What's the right reward? So this is our final economy. Resources are created in taps, we store them in inventories, we can exchange them for something more useful with converters, though sometimes they'll be lost into drains and need to be replaced. And some games may even include traders who want to buy and sell their own stock of resources. As resources flow through the system, the way these entities are designed and balanced is going to change the pace, challenge, and feel of the game. Of course, this graph is not going to describe every single game. Simple titles may not have every single entity or every route for resources to flow. And it certainly doesn't describe massively multiplayer games and those with real-world money transactions. I think I'll leave that to the in-house economists and future finance ministers. Before I go though, remember that story about how CD Projekt Red fixed the cow exploit by spawning a massive monster into White Orchard? Well, it was all well and good until higher level players realized that this monster could be killed and its head sold for a huge profit. And all you need to do to spawn one is kill a few cows. So the devs had to patch the game again. Now the monster only spawns once. Like I said, video game economies can be pretty complicated. Hey, thanks for watching. This video was originally a lecture I gave at Breda University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands. While I was there, I ended up giving 4 different lectures on various topics. And so, if you're a GMTK patron on the video tier, I've just released a recording of the first talk, which is about techniques I use to
This is what freedom sounds like. And this is what freedom smells like. Enjoy 30 days of open road freshness. Febreze car.
Ever since Taylor started looking for a new cashback credit card, she's been freezing out. I got this.
Or you can try NerdWallet, which has side-by-side comparisons to help find the best credit card for you.
Ooh, thanks.
NerdWallet, the smartest decision for all your financial decisions.
The MMORPG genre has millions of players across multiple games, from major studio releases to the more niche markets. And yet, as a genre, it has relatively few content creators. There are a handful of general MMO channels covering the genre as a whole, several video essay channels who touch on MMOs from time to time, and then specialized channels who focus on a specific game. But when you compare the MMORPG content creator roster to larger genres like first-person shooters or battle royales, even individual games like Minecraft or League of Legends, we are relatively small. The truth is, I want more people to start making MMO content, but there are some harsh truths you should know before starting. So why aren't there more general MMO content creators? Why aren't new up-and-coming YouTubers flooding into this market? And what's affecting the quality and quantity of the content that the current content creators can put out? Let's find out. Welcome, I'm Josh Strife-Hayes, and in this video I'm going to pull back the curtain on MMORPG content creation full expose style. I'll be talking to several other MMO content creators about their process and the challenges they face. If you've ever watched any MMO content creator, either general genre focused or game specific, and thought, why do all these guys suck? We need better creators. Then this video is for you, because put simply, we want more people to make MMO content, but we also need to be honest with you about what you're getting yourself into. This isn't me complaining about my job. I think I have the best job in the world, and I'm privileged to be able to create content on a genre I love so much. This video is simply a look at the reality of the challenges you will face creating content within the MMO arena. For this video, I reached out to and interviewed several other YouTubers who cover general MMO content, several who specialize in one specific MMO game, and several general entertainment channels whose work includes MMOs. These channels include Asmongold, Kira TV,
Yeah, man, this is not gonna be terrible. That's hilarious, actually. Is that armor? Oh, snake, dude. This site is actually pretty ballin' if you look at it. For actually on Ingenious Hunter. like match friend or something. No big deal, no big deal. Festa. Alright, I'm gonna go to sleep. I watched enough of those macros. I mean, things. I've watched enough of those.